To the insurance company that did me wrong. I've moved on and am happily insured with another. Bless your pea-picking heart. It was just never meant to be betwixt us. You gave me automobile insurance apprehension. And Geico has come along and in just 15 minutes given me new car insurance and made me as jubilant as a newborn lamb in springtime. And Paul has given Geico his approval. That's one thing you never had. Joyful with another. Clara May in Columbia.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good morning and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and we have a great show for you today. Our interview was pre-recorded. I was supposed to be on the road heading down to my son's high school tennis match down in South Georgia, but the parents that were going decided we would let the boys be there on their own. There are a couple parents there with the coach, but it was a 4.5-hour drive, so the majority of us begged off this one. And so if you're listening, please send good vibes down to our Walton Raiders this afternoon as they play their state semifinal match. Hopefully they'll come back victorious and have a place in Saturday's finals. So it's been a pretty exciting high school season. But that said, I have an interview for you today with George Opelka. George is the dad of Reilly Opelka. And Reilly has been a top junior player and recently made a very big decision and a very big announcement, which you'll hear about during the interview. And so it was really fun to catch up with George and get some background on Reilly's development and his path to this big decision that he recently made. I've had the chance to meet George and his lovely wife Lynn on several occasions now, and so it was fun for me to kind of get to pick his brain a little bit. Reilly is an outstanding young man. He has worked very hard since a very young age, and so I'm thrilled for him and thrilled for his family. Before I play the interview, I want to just give you a heads up. Next week, we are going to have on the show Andy Ram. Andy has won 3 Grand Slam titles, 2 in mixed doubles, 1 in men's doubles, and he's going to be on the show next week talking about a variety of things, and I think it's going to be a great interview, so I hope you'll tune in. And also, you can always go back and listen to our podcast by going to ParentingAces.com and clicking on the radio show tab at the top of the page, or by going to the Parenting Aces YouTube channel, and several of our podcasts are housed there as well. So I hope you'll share them and use the resource in any way that's helpful to you. I do these interviews because I learn a lot, and then I post them online, so hopefully you guys will learn as well. So hope you're enjoying them, and like I said, today's interview is a great one. Before I start the interview with George, I want to just play a quick announcement, and then when we come back, George Opelka.
Warning. Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Welcome back to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and as I mentioned before, I have a pre-recorded interview with George Opelka coming right up. The interview does run just a couple minutes past the hour, so those of you tuning in live today, please check back on ParentingAces.com this afternoon. The podcast will be online there and on our YouTube channel, so you can catch the last few minutes. But I hope you enjoyed the interview. I certainly loved getting to chat with George. So without further ado, here's my interview with George Opelka.
When is the last time you talked to your mother or told her that you love her? Has it been a while? Well, let's surprise Mom with flowers. Mother's Day is coming up on Sunday, May 10th, and JustFlowers.com can help you find the perfect gift for your mom. That's JUSTFlowers.com. Or you can call us at 1-844-296-2148 and use coupon code BlogTalkRadio to save $5 on your order. Again, that's 1-844-296-2148 or JustFlowers.com and use coupon code BlogTalkRadio to save $5 on your order.
I'm thrilled to have with me George Opelka. George's son, Reilly, has been a top junior player here in the U.S. since he was very, very young. And recently, Reilly made a very big decision and a very big announcement. And I thought it would be fun to have George, the dad, on the show to give us a little background on Reilly's development through the juniors, his coaching, how his parents have been involved in his tennis, and this recent decision and how it came to be, and all the information that they had to gather to come to a decision. So, George, thank you so much for being with us and being willing to be candid with us about this journey that y'all have been on.
Well, hey, it's great to be here, Lisa. I've been told many times I have a great face for radio, so it looks like the stars have aligned for today.
Well, I want to let my readers know you also have a website called Chalk Flew Up, and you tweet under that same name, Chalk Flew Up. And I guess you and I initially, did we connect through social media before we actually met in person? I can't even remember now, but I do remember meeting you at the U.S. Open and then seeing you guys again at the NCAAs and again at the U.S. Open. So, I feel like we're old friends now, which is awesome.
Yeah, we definitely met on social media because, I'm always hungry for more information about junior tennis or just tennis in general. And it was great to see one more website pop up talking about, junior tennis and teaching, both parents and juniors how to kind of weave through this, this crazy web that we all do.
Well, and you guys have had a really crazy journey. I know your son Reilly is your tennis player, but you also have a daughter. Is it just the two of them? I can't remember.
We've got we have two kids, and we have a ferocious Yorkie named Trixie.
And your daughter's a bit older. She's in college already?
Correct. Yeah, our daughter Brenda's at Florida State, so she's a couple years older than Reilly. So she's just wrapping up her second year in Tallahassee and absolutely just loving college.
And she is not a tennis player, if I remember correctly.
That's debatable. She, both our kids were tennis players early on, and she was, I thought Brenda was a great tennis player, but her heart took her into a different direction. So she's our dancer.
Gotcha. And I met her. She's a beautiful young lady, and I'm thrilled for her that she's found her place and is enjoying her college experience. That's great. So let's get back to the tennis part of this. I want to just ask you, Reilly's been a top junior really for a lot of years now. Can you kind of take us back to the beginning of his journey and go back to how he got started playing tennis?
Sure. In 2002, my career took our family from Southwest Michigan to Florida, and we actually lived not too far from Kalamazoo. in a town called St. Joseph, which is small little town, right across the lake from Chicago, which is where Lynn and I both grew up. Reilly played, he probably took a handful of lessons prior to the move, but nothing substantial to really speak of. 2002, again, my job took me to North Florida. We're sandwiched somewhere, north of from Jacksonville, or south of Jacksonville, and north of Daytona Beach, and that's really not considered a tennis mecca like maybe South Florida is, but that's where my career took me. And we moved into a community that had at the time I think we had 4 hard-true courts. We got 7 now, and there was the club pro there was a guy by the name of Rich Walker, just a great guy. And it wasn't really a big competitive tennis community, but we probably 2,000 homes in the community. So there's plenty of tennis players, but not really many juniors. And I think Lynn took Reilly down there one day just to check out the courts, and we ran into this guy named Rich Walker, and put a racket in his hand, and really I don't think it's left his hand since. But Rich was just a great guy. I still keep in touch with him. Reilly's probably had, over the years, I was jotting him down earlier today. He's probably had 11 different coaches from age 5 on. So we moved here when he was just 4.5 years old, and it's not that that Reilly has crazy tennis parents who are always bopping around from coach to coach to coach to coach. It's just the way it goes sometimes. I mean, you're a tennis parent, and sometimes it's just out of your control. The coach may move on, and you learn as much as you can from him, and you move on to the next one. So that's really been how Reilly's tennis has evolved. But Rich Walker was very low key, made tennis very fun for Reilly at an early age. But he moved on from our club. But he really kind of introduced Reilly to tennis and got him interested. But then from there, it really where we had a club here in Palm Coast. It was called the Palm Coast Players Club, and that's where we went to next. And Reilly was probably 6 or 7. Beautiful club. It's no longer, but they had clay courts. They had hard courts. We even had grass there, grass courts.
Wow.
And it's just a beautiful facility. I mean, probably 20 courts. So Reilly started taking, clinics there and meeting other young, players. And there's probably 10, 15 kids in those clinics. With both, Reilly and my daughter, Brenna, were involved in those. That was just really, it was a special place. And it had a history behind it because a pretty good tennis player back in his day, and coach by the name of Tom Gullikson, happened to live in the same town. And Tom used to, work out of that club quite a bit. But he worked with, Jim Courier there. He worked with Todd Martin used to train there. I know Capriati played in the tournament there. Agassi played in the tournament there. So there was, a great little tennis history here in Palm Coast that revolved around this players club. So, we took a lot of clinics there when Reilly was young, and they just kept it fun for Reilly. That was, I'd say, so critical. And the kids just loved tennis. And, from there we went to down at Daytona Beach. There's a beautiful facility there called the Florida Tennis Center. And, we got very involved in team tennis. I'd say when Reilly was probably about 7. And, I met another guy there, just to give you some of the people that I thought were, influential to Reilly's tennis, is we met a guy by the name of Harry Gilbert. I don't know if you know that Harry at all.
I don't know him, but I definitely know his name. Yeah.
Yeah, Harry's not at a loss for words, and he's a great friend, great guy. He was former USPTA president, I think for a couple of years. And I met him down at the Florida Tennis Center, and he was also, at the time when I met him, he was coaching this maybe 8 or 9 year old kid that he was really high on by the name of Nicky Crystal. Which I'm sure you know that name.
I know the family very well. Yeah, they're a great family.
Great family, great kid. You know, Nikki plays at USC today. So Harry Gilbert worked with Harry or with Nikki from a pretty young age. You know, I think he had ties to New York. So so we met Harry then, and I was looking for a coach. You know, because our coach had moved around, and so Harry's a really likable guy, and he obviously is pretty decorated in terms of just his accomplishments as a coach. So I tried this guy out, and we were only taking one lesson a week. It's kind of what we did. It's what was in the budget. But Reilly played tennis pretty much every day. But we would take a lesson a week, and Harry, again, high energy, kept it fun. But the problem I ran into with Harry is he wasn't there in Florida full time. So he went to New York every summer, and he ran a pretty big club there. So again, we just needed a consistent message. So just that's the way it works sometimes. So we moved on and met another great guy who I still keep in touch with, Paul Christensen, who's a director of tennis over at a club here in Palm Coast called Hammock Beach. He's got a unique gift of how to just make tennis fun for kids at a young age, and kids just light up when they see Gene every day. And that was, I'd say, another critical guy in Reilly's tennis life. Maybe not necessarily teaching him all these guys. I mean, he's a great teacher, but the key ingredient that he brought to tennis was fun. So worked out with Gene for a while, and he went to a different club. So met a couple other guys along the way. C.J. Travers, coach out of Maryland in the area here, great coach. Taught Reilly a lot about just playing fair and keeping the ball in the court. Taught him a lot about short angles, just things that I didn't know anything about. I wasn't a tennis player. So several other players, along the way, or coaches along the way, helped Reilly. But at around he's probably around age 10 or 11. I ran into one of my other, I guess, parents that you bond with parents during all these junior tournaments over the years.
Sure.
A junior tennis parent came up to me and said, "Hey, I hope it's okay, but I gave your name and phone number to some coach over at USTA in the player development program." And I said, "That's fine." And he said, "Well, they told me that they were attracting kids and they're looking at kids in Florida, and this parent said, well, if you're looking for kids in Florida in this year of 97, you should also talk to this look at this kid Reilly Opelka." And so I got a call maybe sometime shortly after that from somebody down at USTA. It was Kent Kinnear, played at Clemson years ago. Big tall guy like me.
Another great guy. Yeah.
Super guy. I mean, tennis aside, the guy's a rock star. Superhuman being. I mean, obviously, Ken, and just a great guy. So that kind of got us our introduction to, or at least our first introduction to player development, and because we were kind of trapped up here in Palm Coast. Again, great place to raise a family, but when we moved here, there was 30,000 people in Palm Coast, and not a big place, not many tennis players, and in fact, the kids from South Florida used to come up here to play in the Super Series because they knew it was a great place to just rack up points. Because the talent
the dreaded point
good.
Chasers.
That's right. So and we love that because that brought great players up here to play because we didn't really travel. It just wasn't what Lynn and I thought was the right way to go. We traveled a little bit, but when I tell you, we traveled all over Florida though. We were
right.
We were light on the lessons, heavy on the play, and that's kind of what we did. I mean, one lesson a week, and then we played every day. I mean, Reilly. I mean, in terms of like players that he played with when he was young, played against a guy by the name of Paul Christensen, who was a coach at the time. He's not coaching now, but I happen to work with Paul. but and live in the same community. But Paul played at BYU Hawaii in college. But Reilly and Paul probably played at a minimum 5 days a week, maybe 6 days a week, every day from like age, probably 6, 7 until about 10 or 11. Every day they would play just games like tug of war, things that where you could take the serve out of play because a 10-year-old can't outserve a 30-year-old.
Right.
There's too much power. So played a lot of games and drills with Paul, and he was played a huge part in Reilly's development over the years, and still does.
Let me ask you something though, which I think people listening to this might be curious about too. How did you find Paul? How did you connect with him, and how did that whole relationship start? Because there aren't a lot of 30-year-olds that want to go out and hit with a 6-year-old every day.
Yeah, well, Paul's just a unique guy. The guy loves tennis, and the way I met him was at that players club that we used to go to, for clinics. Paul was a teaching pro there, and had a young family, 3 kids, very good tennis player, and somewhere along the line, he decided, I don't want to teach tennis the rest of my life with, a young family. Just might be the best thing for his family. So Paul ended up leaving the business, but and because we're in a small town and we got to know Paul quite well, Paul joined the company that I work with. Believe it or not, so we became good friends, and so that's really how I got to know Paul, and he still loves to play tennis, and lived in the same community as me, so that's really how I got to meet Paul.
So did you approach him, or did he approach you, or how did the whole relationship come about? How did it come about that he became Reilly's hitting partner?
I actually took a lesson from him when he was at the Players Club. Because I'm an athlete, but I'm certainly not a tennis player. If you saw me play, no one would accuse me of leaving work early to go play tennis. That's for sure. But I love the game. But that's how I met Paul, and also met him, got to know him just through Reilly. And there's another person I work with who's got a son that plays and very good tennis player. We all got to know Paul, and we liked him, as a person. So and got to know him, and as he we're always looking for good people in our company. So that's how Paul joined the company, and that's how we really got to know him. And he had young kids that were starting to hit. So his kids are a little younger than Reilly. So, and I was at about their level tennis wise. So I would hit with his kids, and he would hit with Reilly. So
that's a perfect trade-off.
It was perfect, and we had a lot of fun, and we also had some bloody battles, because we're all competitive. But it was all good fun.
Right.
A lot of it, we played that tug of war game a ton, which is good when kids are young. And then as they got older, Paul used to know, he learned a lot of these drills probably from college. We played another game which I thought was so good for Reilly's development. Any kid is, we played this game where you had to start the point off with a lob, and the player on the other side of the court had to hit a bounce overhead, and then you'd play out the point from there. And
wow.
We play a whole set that way. So it really taught kids how to defend, but also taught them how to hit a bounce overhead, which I think the overhead is probably a serve that it's one shot that it's the hardest shot for junior tennis. How many times have you seen a kid just pound an overhead into the net?
Yeah.
Because they don't practice it. But it also mirrors the serve too. So there's a lot of good benefits from that game. We learned and Paul said this is a game that Agassi and I think Brad Gilbert used to play, or somebody like that. So we play that thing once a week. It was just a fun game.
Awesome. So you made all of these coaching changes over the years just kind of out of necessity, but when you were looking for the next influence in Reilly's tennis, what things were you focused on? I mean, you've said a couple times that fun was a big factor for you guys. Were you looking at credentials? Did you talk to other parents? How did you figure out who was the next coach?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, in the early years we were, I'd say we were just naive, so you kind of, I think what people do is they kind of go where, well, he's a good player. Who does he coach with? Who's his coach? That's what we probably did in the early years. Or we'd go, where are the other kids? So Reilly could hit with other kids. And so that drove a lot of it. Again, we weren't really, I don't think we really ever, seldom was there a case where there wasn't a fit. It was just circumstances led coaches to leave or whatever. But I think where it really changed for Reilly was somewhere around the age of, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9, probably 9, maybe even before, actually maybe before then. I went and joined a golf club here in town. Again, I'm not a great golfer, but something you can do in Florida, and every now and then is cheap. So I joined a golf club because they had this new introductory offer. And I'm sitting in this long line to join the golf club, and this guy in front of me is just, looked like he's looking for somebody to talk to, and it ended up being Tom Gullikson. So so Tom and I were in line. That was probably when Reilly was about 7. So Tom and I were in line, and then we got to yapping and hit it off. We're both Midwestern guys. He's a cheesehead, and I'm from Chicago. So Tom and I really became good friends at that club because he's a little bit older than me, but not a whole heck of a lot. So we were close in age and both Midwesterners. So we ended up playing a ton of golf together. And he's a remarkable golfer. He's just a lot better than me. So he ended up, I became his student on the golf course, and he didn't make me a pretty good golfer, but he certainly improved me tremendously. So somewhere along, our relationship, a couple of years into it, maybe, he got to hear about my family, and Reilly was playing a little bit of tennis, and he was traveling a ton, this is before he was with USTA. And he asked me, hey, do you mind if I take a look at, Reilly's tennis game? And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Did you know who he was at that point? Did you know his pedigree?
Yeah, I did. I grew up, I grew up in the Midwest, a tennis fan. I went to high school with probably the first big boomer, serve in tennis. A guy by the name of Eric Carita, who played back in the 80s. Didn't have a long career, but man, he just had a huge serve. And again, another guy I still keep in touch with, a great resource. Eric's with that company that puts the bounce back in tennis balls. I don't know if you know that company.
Yeah.
So, Eric, he's one of the founders. So I followed tennis back then because of Eric. He left my high school back in, I think, his sophomore year. He told us, because he played in the basketball team, big guy. He said, well, I'm gonna move out of Chicago and go down to Florida and go to this tennis academy called Bollettieri. So, which is it sounded just insane to me at the time,
Right.
So I knew. So I followed tennis a lot back then, just because guys like Eric, and used to go to the I think it was a Volvo back then, and saw guys like Mayotte play and the McEnroe brothers, and so followed tennis from that standpoint. I also had a brother that went to a pretty powerful tennis college back in the day, Trinity, in San Antonio. You guys like that's a major. The Stocktons played there, Godfrey, both Godfrey boys played there, Andy Brandy, just and on and on and on. So I knew Tom about his credentials, but maybe not to the degree that I do today. So he asked me if he could look at Reilly's game, and I went sure. And so he went out and hit with them, and he said, well, do you mind if I change anything? You carte blanche, you can do whatever you want, Gully. So, because Reilly had a grip like Nadal's, he was just so extreme, and he had a serve that Gully used to call the waiter serve, the way he used to hold his hands up. So he pretty much changed everything, except for the kids, passion for tennis, but he fixed it, or I shouldn't say, fixed, but he made a lot of changes, to his game. And one of the first things he he taught Reilly, which, is, I think, his signature today is, after a match, whether you win or lose, you'll see, Reilly Opelka take his hat off and shake his opponent's hand and, tell him good match. Those are he learned some lessons from guys like Tom. But I would say of all the people that have been, instrumental in Reilly's development, Tom Gullikson has been, a great mentor, a great friend, and, Reilly's, second dad in a lot of ways. Just
that's
because
fantastic.
he believed in, doing it the right way. But Tom was key, and, I'd say a key person, but unfortunately he left, his, I wouldn't say he was retired at the time, but he was doing a lot of, just exhibitions and clinics all over the country on his own. But then USTA scooped him up and moved him out to California, so we were out of luck with the coach, and again the hunt continued on. And at the time, I found another great hitting partner for Reilly at a tournament. Again, he was probably around 10 years old then. I met this father. I was watching this girl play who I thought was fantastic. Her name's Josie Coleman, another tennis family. I don't know if you know Josie Coleman, but she plays for UF right now, for Florida.
I don't know.
Tremendous,
yeah.
Tremendous tennis family. Probably one of the best competitors I've seen is this gal, Josie Coleman. I think she plays number 2 for Florida as a freshman behind Brooke Austin. Great player. But great kid, and they live just up the road from us, maybe 45 minutes. So we started hitting, we would go up there once a week. They would come down here once a week just so Reilly could have somebody to hit with. And she was just a nightmare to play because she competes so hard. And at that age, boys aren't going to overpower girls. They're about the same,
Right.
But really learned how to compete with her. But she had this coach she was working with by the name of Brian Gottfried, who I knew of, but I didn't know Brian. So I managed to because my brother went to Trinity and and got to know he was pretty good buddies with Larry Gottfried. So I put a call into Brian, and again another one of those rock stars of tennis. Respects the game, and teaches you nothing more than that. But he knows the game, knows how to teach. So we started going to Brian once a week. Funny story about Brian. One of the first times I went out there to Reilly's first lesson, I took him out there, and he's just a little kid. And he's on the court, and like most of those tennis parents do, I mean, I'm sure you've done it a million times. I've done it a million times. I walk out on the court, when they got through pounding a basket or two, and I start picking up balls.
Mm-hmm.
And Brian waves his finger at me and tells me to get off the court. He said, no. That's his job. And I said, oh, boy, I just walked right into this guy's office, and he kicked me out, And really the lesson learned was he wasn't trying to eat up time on the clock, because I got more than my hour's worth of lesson from Brian. He was just trying to teach these kids that, they're not entitled, and you come out here, you work hard, and you pick up after yourself. So just, which I thought never even crossed my mind, but those are just little, tidbits or lessons that they just make sense when you take a step back and, and look at it.
Sure. I had a coach actually tell me that, get off the court, same thing, because this is my time to have casual conversation with your kid and pick up on things that may be going on at school or maybe at home, and get me insight, into things that he's not going to tell me while we're hitting balls during the lesson. And that was another, kind of aha moment for me, similar to your aha moment. So
yeah, that just makes sense to me. I mean, I totally get that. They get to know your kid better. So aside from Brian being a great coach, great teacher, he's just another super, like Kinnear, like Gullikson, just a superhuman being, and learned a lot. Still keep in touch with Brian, on a regular basis, and just learned a lot from him. A lot of little things that you remember from each coach. Like Brian told Reilly at very young age, hey, you're only as good as your second serve. So we would hit a ton of second serves and learn how to hit second serves. Just little things stick, from each one of these coaches. And he was really the last coach we had up in North Florida before Reilly made the move down to Boca. We started going to like development camps or developmental camps. The USTA would invite Reilly maybe once every 6 weeks for a weekend, and to come down just to get a feel for it and play against other kids, that would bring in from all over the country. People that didn't really know Reilly, because we didn't go on the national tour thing. We didn't go to national tournaments, maybe one outside the state, because we didn't have to. We stayed close to home and just played against, either older men or girls that were better than Reilly, or, that's really what we did. Played against a retired professor from Carnegie Mellon. There was probably 55 that used to, just chop and dice Reilly to shreds, at a young age. But Brian was kind of that last guy, and he was very involved in the decision to go to Boca. And we had a number of discussions with Jay Berger. And again, we weren't hard sold at all by USTA. This was, something that they kind of brought Reilly down for all these camps, and, got to meet a lot of these guys that, like the Henrik Weersholms and, the Jake Devines and people that we didn't know, Tommy Paul, So we'd come down to these camps, and then at some point in time, got to know, Kent Kinnear pretty well, and, and Jay Berger, and I had met Jay once back in the early Reilly years at a tournament in Cincinnati. Didn't, know anything about player development. But, Kent said, how do you guys feel about, moving down to, having Reilly move down to, to Boca and training full time down here with the, part of the player development program? Of course he wanted to do it, who wouldn't? What kid wouldn't?
How old was he at that time? How old was Reilly at that point?
He was 12.
Okay.
I think he was probably the youngest kid they've ever had down there in player development. I believe that's true. He was 12, and so Lynn and I, of course everyone was interested or excited, but Lynn and I went home, and we really didn't like the idea of sending Reilly down there by himself. It just, didn't want to move in the dorm, and part of mom doesn't want to let go either.
Sure.
So we figured out a way to do it where we would, divide and conquer. Where we rented a condo down there, and Lynn, Reilly, and my daughter and the dog moved down to Boca. And
you got ditched.
Well, I got ditched, but I was only 3.5 hours away.
Well, that's good.
And I travel, significantly, or I travel quite a bit in my career, so it wasn't that huge of a leap for us. But it wasn't ideal, but it was better than putting Reilly in a dorm at age 12. And I had other, I drew upon some other experiences. Talked to Adam Schachterly, who was at Wilson's at the time, who's now an assistant at Notre Dame. Another great guy. And he told me that, he went away from home at a young age to an academy by himself, and he said he was too young. And this was before we kind of made that decision. So we got to talk to some other people that kind of went down that road. So we decided to do this. Let's do this, this condo thing, and we rented that condo, and which is, it made sense, but it was. We put the decision, really, the final decision, in the hands of my daughter, in terms of really doing it, because she'd have to be uprooted too. We gave her the option to stay home with me or to move down there, with everybody else. And she really didn't want to stay home in Palm Coast. She was supportive of the decision. I think it may have just been, interesting to her. So she started, her sophomore year down there, and went to a great school down there, a great high school, which I thought was extremely competitive. The kids worked hard. She took all AP classes. We knew some tennis kids there already. Tate Allward, who I'm sure you know, now plays for Vanderbilt. Tate went to the same high school. They had great dance classes down there. We found a great dance school for her. So I think, looking back, I think my daughter won with the relocation as just as much as Reilly did, by making that move down to Boca. So those are kind of the steps that moved up. That's good to hear,
yeah.
But those are the steps that led up to it. But Brian Gottfried, he wanted to keep working with Reilly. He really did, and he also saw the benefit of keeping the family together. But he also saw the benefit of the ability to train with some of the best kids around. There's constantly good players coming in, to Boca. It just made sense in terms of Reilly wanting to take tennis to the next level. Brian was involved with the process and had a number of discussions with Jay Berger and his team. So we made that move when he was 12. Go ahead.
That's a big move, George. And at that point, did y'all recognize that there was something different about Reilly in terms of his tennis, or were you still just thinking, he's a really good player and they seem interested, so we're going to check this out and see how it goes?
It's a great question. I don't know if we really knew that Reilly was, we knew the kid loved tennis. We knew he would be a big kid. How good he was, I don't think we really knew that he was, good, really, good little tennis player until he maybe won I think it was the clay courts at age 12. I think it was in the 12s. Yeah, he won a gold ball in the 12s. And then I thought, it's a good little player. He went down there. Nobody knew him because he was unseeded because we didn't travel, and beat a couple of good kids. But then, it's 12s. I always had people tell me it's just a 12s. So it doesn't matter.
Right.
And then so then we thought, this guy's he's got a chance to be a good little player, and he had we had some smart people around us that knew tennis, a lot better than I did, that really had Reilly's best interests at heart, guys like Gully, and Brian Gottfried, these guys know tennis, and so, I think that was really more reassuring to us that, it was a good move, that, maybe something could develop here, than us trying to just figure it out on our own or take somebody that we don't know's advice. But, I will say that USTA was because you hear all the stories about USTA out there, and there was no sell job, there was no promises. That was pretty much we think the kid can be a good player one day possibly. If you want to come down here and and work hard, that's the only. There's no shortcuts. But there's again, I thought those guys were straight shooters from the get go with us. From Kent Kinnear was really the guy in the early years, and then Berger was heading the place up, and I still think Jay Berger's one of the hardest working guys in tennis, and just tells it like it is, and
right.
I think that rolls all the way downhill throughout that staff, and worked with guys like Mike Sell, again, good friend, who's gone. He's his wife's I think the head coach over at LSU on the women's side, so Mike's over there in Baton Rouge, and I'm sure you know Mike, but again, another just solid human being, trusted advisor, good friend.
I play tennis with his mother-in-law. We're on the same ladies team. Small world.
I just met her 2 weeks ago. I was in business in New Orleans, and I saw that LSU was playing Texas A&M and men's, and anyone knows I'm a tennis junkie, so I'm like, I'm going to drive over to Baton Rouge and watch a match and see if Mike's there. And so I'm walking into the stadium, and the first person I run into is Julia Sell and her mom. So very first,
so funny.
First person I met. It's the first time I met her mother, but I've known Julia for years. But super family, and was Reilly's first. I believe he was Reilly's first or second coach at USTA. Tennis.
Wow.
Just Mike's tennis nut. He studies film. Taught Reilly a lot about just competing hard. I think he pretty much rebuilt Reilly's serve just by watching hours and hours of serve, and And he told me one day, he was at USTA like on a Sunday, just watching film. He says, I'm gonna rebuild Reilly's service motion, at least his first serve, around John Isner. Well, that makes sense to me.
Was Reilly 80,000 feet tall at that point yet, or he was still average height?
I don't know if he was average.
Those are my listeners. Those are my listeners who have not had the good fortune to watch Reilly play. I mean, I have to just share. He is a very tall human being, and he has been called John Isner's doppelganger. They actually look similar to one another on the court. Somebody mistook him for John's younger brother at the U.S. Open last year, I think. I saw something on Twitter. It was really funny.
Yeah, he was always tall, but he wasn't, just way heads and shoulders above everybody else. He's always, I'd say, taller than some of the other kids. The growth came in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, but he was always tall. I mean, I always said to Collins, "What are you feeding that kid?" And I'm like, "Just HGH." I mean, just But if you look at Lynn and I, we're both tall people.
I was going to say, he doesn't have short parents.
And Lynn's dad is, he's not with us anymore, but Lynn's dad was taller than I was. And she's got tall brothers, and so about 6'5", 6'6". So I think it'd be strange if we had a kid that was 5'8".
Right. Well, so did Reilly? I mean, did he always know that tennis was what he was going to pursue, or at what age was he one of those kids that said, "I'm going to be number one in the world"? Or was he one of those kids who said, "I just want to play tennis all the time"? Or was he one of those kids who, really didn't talk about it that much?
Yeah, I would say that he wasn't one of those kids that said, "I want to be number one in the world." I don't know what he might have been thinking, but he was one of those kids that, went to bed with his tennis racket. That's what he. I have just a few recollections of him playing like t-ball here. I just didn't like it. I mean, he played; he was good, at the snot out of the ball, but I just didn't like it. Tennis was pretty much all he played. Once he started hitting the ball, I mean, our neighbors used to comment that the kid's going to put a hole in the back wall of your garage, because he would be out there all day long. And Lynn would always be concerned that the next shot's going to be coming through the house. That was pretty much from age 5 to 10, or until he went out in the court. Didn't really have interest. He's a sportsman. He loved watching sports, and he likes to. If he's not playing tennis, you usually find him shooting baskets somewhere or fishing. Those are the kind of things he likes to do when he's not playing basketball. Loves to fish and loves to shoot hoops, but I try to keep him out of pickup games. That's the challenge. No pickup games. You can go play around the world or horse, but no 5-on-5 or 3-on-3.
Yeah, that you don't want the kid getting hurt. That would not be good.
So, but yeah, I don't think he really had any early, goals. At least that he would. Reilly's a pretty. If you know him, he's a happy kid. And he's a fun kid, but he's relatively shy. So he didn't go out there and say, "I'm going to be number one in the world." Just not his. Really, it's not part of his personality.
But he never even said that to y'all privately?
No.
Interesting. Because you hear, like, you read Agassi's autobiography, and he was very decisive, and his dad was very decisive about where he was headed with his tennis. And you hear that a lot with these top professional players. When you go back and look at their childhood, it's there were statements made very early in the process about where they were going with their tennis. Djokovic, is famous for that. And so I think it's an interesting question to look at, especially with a 17-year-old who has recently made this huge decision and to kind of look back and say, oh, has he been gearing up all these years for this moment, or is this a process that really just naturally evolved because he found his passion at an early age, and he was really lucky that happened for him,
I think you're right. I think it's the latter. I do think it's the latter, and I think it's because it's not that maybe that's not, I'm sure he was thinking that, he played more matches probably than most of the kids in Florida, but he also took less lessons than most of the kids in Florida. We played and played. We played so many tournaments in the state because, I'd say we were fortunate to have Florida as our backyard, but there's so many match opportunities just driving around. You could find tournaments so easy. And I talked to so many parents in the Midwest where, it might be easy for me to say, just go find a match. Well, it's not that easy around the country, and I've learned that.
Right.
And we were competitive parents. I'm sure I think we all kind of, I don't want to say we mellow, but we learn over the years. I'm sure we were all crazy tennis parents, at some point in time, and you just kind of learn as you go. We chase points. I am not a fan of rankings, but I would call them a necessary evil. I'd say, then I would say you got to play the game just to get in the tournaments, but don't live by your ranking, because just use it as a vehicle to get into a tournament. Only one guy's going to win anyway, but I think there's still a little bit too much ranking obsession that goes on in this country.
I think you're right. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Well, this time is going so fast. I want to get to Reilly's decision to turn pro as opposed to signing with a college team and playing college tennis. And I know Reilly's been at the top of the recruiting list for the last several years and has been a highly sought after recruit from the college perspective. I know, several of the coaches in the SEC were looking at him. Several of the coaches on the West Coast were looking at him. And I know this has been a decision that he's really taken very seriously and has taken his time with. And I'm just curious if you could share, maybe not every little detail, but some of what the conversations went like in your house when Lagardère came to the door and, now it's all of a sudden, do I go to college or do I turn pro? And it's really an option now. How do I decide which route to take?
Yeah, tough. It was a process, that's for sure. But it wasn't like a quick process for us. I'd say, I got approached by an agent, or Reilly got approached by an agent, maybe at the age of 13 or 14, and not trying to get him to sign. It was more or less, hey, just like your kid, like the way he plays, love the way he competes, keep working, and I'll keep in touch with you, over the years. And that's really when it started. So, and that was the first, hint of, hey, maybe this guy thinks that, this kid could be a player, And then, I met Sam Duvall maybe shortly thereafter, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, at a tournament, and again, low key, no sales pitch. It wasn't, what you'd expect to see, like you see in the movies. These guys are, they're professionals and they're not really sharks. At least my interactions with these representatives have been nothing but, professional and reserved. So there was no bright lights, big city, and no big dollars or anything. It's just, hey, that's really how it all started. And as Reilly got a little bit older and maybe had a little bit more success in a couple of big tournaments, then it started to get, it was more of a difficult decision because, obviously I went to college, Lynn went to college. I absolutely, I have a huge passion for college tennis. I think it's arguably, although I don't like all the changes that have gone on in college tennis, arguably I think it's the best product we have in tennis in the world. Anybody that hasn't gone to a college tennis match and they're a tennis fan, they need to go. I mean, that's the best
I'm with
drug
you.
out.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love it.
There's nothing like it. I mean, and if I did anything different looking back, I would have started taking Reilly because we're relatively close to Gainesville. I would have taken Reilly to Gainesville at a very young age because I knew the kid loved tennis. He would have been just addicted. Just so exciting. So we had, and because I love college tennis and tennis in general, but that was a difficult decision for Reilly. But I think what it really boiled down to was, the kid has his game is suited for the pro game. Big serve, pretty big forehand. And is he ready to go tear up the tour? Absolutely not. Does he have an opportunity to continue to develop as a player and develop that pro style game? Absolutely. So it just became a matter of timing. Can he go to college 3 years from now? If things don't work out, or absolutely can go to college. Whenever college will always be there. The opportunity to chase your dream, isn't always going to be there. That's got a fixed window or a finite window. Father Time isn't on your side if you're a professional athlete. So that was some of the process we walked through, but it really boiled down to what does Reilly really want to do? It's not what Dad wants or Mom wants or even what any coaches want. It just boils down to what does the kid want to do, and that's really what he wants to do. He wants to take the next step and just continue to work hard. The best advice I heard regarding Reilly's track was probably about a year ago, a little bit longer than that, maybe a year and a half ago. Jay Berger said, some of the best things said are just simple, tidbits. He said, don't think about college. Don't think about the tour. Just think about getting better every day. And that's
great advice. Yeah, it's great advice.
And if you do that, then, everything else will just take care of itself naturally. So, and I think I think Reilly took that advice and continued to work hard, and some things happened, and it helped him come to his decision. Does that mean he's going to go be top 20 in the tour? No, it just helped him get to his decision, and he'll go to the next phase and work hard, continue to work hard, and then just see what happens. Just had he gone to college, he would have done the same thing. He'd work hard, whether it's school or tennis, and continue to get better each day and just see what happens. But this is kind of just what he wanted to do. In terms of picking like Lagardère, I think, I really think there's so many great companies out there, so many great representatives that, I don't think there was really a bad decision in terms of which way he went. I just think he was, I think he was very comfortable with the company and very comfortable with the relationship that he had with Sam Duval.
And so what's next for him? I mean, so a kid at 17 signs that contract, and now he's a professional player. And so what does he do? Does he continue to train at USTA? What does his tournament schedule look like? Or is that still all in the works?
I would say no change. He will continue to, he trains under Diego Moyano, who is at USTA, has been with him for a couple of years, and, he thinks the world of Diego. He's a great player in his day and, a workhorse. If I had to define Diego in one word, it's a workhorse. A very passionate man about tennis, and he's got a young family, but Reilly really respects and responds well to Diego. So from here, continue to train hard at USTA, take care of his body. That's probably one of the biggest challenges that, a young man of Reilly's, stature is going to face, is we really have to just take care of his body, manage his schedule, with just smarts. The plan is for him to play out the remaining junior slams this year. So he's got, I think, Junior French, Junior Wimbledon, Junior U.S. Open, probably Kalamazoo, and then start chipping away at the futures and challengers, and taking some lumps and some thumps and some bumps, and then just like Jay said, just get better every day.
So I'll get to see y'all in New York again this summer, I hope.
That's one of Lynn's too, one of my favorite cities. That's another one of those tournaments that I think just find a way to get to it. And there's nothing like was it the 3 or the 7 train that goes out to Flushing Meadow? It's just it's magic. Night tennis in New York there's nothing like it.
I agree.